Okay folks, so today we are going to combine two different styles of cooking because I am going to do both some smoking of some meat here in a minute, and as well as what I would call more traditional style. Depends on who you're talking to as to what might be traditional, because I mean I don't know how much more traditional than you can get than using a open flame, but let's just say old style cooking and new style cooking. So I'm going to do a combination of both here. We're going to be making some beef stew today, and I'm going to take a chuck roast out here onto the smoker, and I'm going to smoke it for about 3 hours. I am not smoking it to, I'm not worried about a finished temperature of the chuck roast or anything like that. I'm smoking it for flavor. If I were browning the chuck roast in a skillet, I would not be necessarily worried that it was browned clear through before putting it into the stew, because it's going to cook in the stew as I build it. And so the same will be true with this chuck roast. Now I would be more concerned about overcooking the chuck roast on the smoker, and for that reason I will be using my digital thermometer on the internal temperature of the chuck roast here. And so we're going to get ready to go and put it on the smoker, but first we're going to get her seasoned up and get our fire going, and then I'll be back with you here shortly. Okay folks, well, a little bit ago I went to the grocery store and I picked myself up this slightly over 2.5 pound chuck roast. It is a choice boneless chuck roast. We're going to get it in here, pull this wrapper away. I'm just going to use the tray it comes in. And I'm going to use my just my basic brisket rub, which is equal parts black pepper and kosher salt, and then a little bit of garlic powder and onion powder. I'm going to spice it up real good here. Flip it over and give it another go. That can go away. Now, if I were making a traditional beef stew, I would be cubing this up into bite-sized chunks, which I will end up doing later, but then I would be browning it in a skillet. My skillet of choice would be, of course, a cast iron skillet, well heated prior to adding the meat. And that way it sears it real quickly. We are going to take this out and put it on the smoker for about 3 hours here. Alright, so I'm using my little smoker today. I got a good combination of charcoal and wood going on in here. That's a piece of oak, I believe. It's a little hard to tell. I've also got myself a bag of mesquite chunks right there that I've been looking for an excuse to get rid of. So today is the day at least to get rid of part of them. And we're running about a little less than 250 right now on this smoker. We're going to put that right in there like so. And I'm not going to show a lot of smoking, smoker work today. That's not the object. The object is to make beef stew. Oh boy. Does that chuck roast look good or what? Thing's looking prime. It's time to pull that off of there. We're going to take that inside and we're going to go to work with it. Okay, so you can see that after 3 hours on the smoker, it's running right at 150 degrees. I'm going to let that rest for just a few minutes before I go to cutting into it. I will be back in just a minute. Okay, so here I've got 2 quarts of beef broth, and if you look up in the upper right hand corner, I'll link you to the video on how to make chicken noodle soup, where I explain the difference between broth, stock, and bouillon. So we're going to put 2 quarts of this beef broth in here. If we need more liquid, I'll be adding some tomato juice. That will be determined on down the road. Now I've got a 1/4 cup of red wine. It goes right in there. Does not have to be expensive red wine. We're cooking, we're not drinking. Now I'm going to take this chuck roast. Now I'm going to begin kind of cubing it up. About 1-inch cubes is fine. It's good enough to eat, I'll tell you. In fact, look at that smoke ring. We're going to take those and we're going to put them right into our beef broth with red wine. This job is much easier with a good sharp knife. If you look up in the top right hand corner, I'll link you to the video on how to sharpen your knives on a budget. Hope is we're going to get some of these, get some of this smoke flavor into our stew. In case you don't know, I do a lot of Instagram, so I take pictures. And that was such a beautiful smoke ring, I just had to take a picture. Now then, I'm going to put this onto the stove and take it to a boil. Then I'm going to simmer it for, I'm going to say, about an hour before we add any vegetables to it. Alright, so there we go, flame on. Put a lid on that because it will boil faster with a lid on there. And I'll check back in with you when we go to turn flame down. Okay, so we are at a boil, and I am going to go ahead and turn my flame down, and we're going to let this simmer for another hour. I'm going to go over here and start my timer and let that simmer for an hour with the lid on, and we'll be back. It's only been about 10 minutes since I was last here, but I've decided to go ahead and add in my can of 114.5 ounce can of fire roasted tomatoes. I got to thinking the acid in the tomatoes will help tenderize that beef. So in goes the can. Okay, so at 45 minutes out, I'm going to go ahead and add my spices. I'm going to add 3 small bay leaves. I cracked those in half to help let the oils out. I'm going to add a teaspoon of parsley flakes. I'm going to add a teaspoon of thyme. And I'm going to give it a good crack of black pepper here. Then I'm going to open it up and put a few, I'm going to say half a teaspoon of black peppercorns in there, just like that. Actually, these are peppercorn medley, which is a multicolored thing. And then I'll give that a stir. And we'll be back in just a little bit. Okay, so that was a half teaspoon of sage you saw me throw in there. Now then, we're going to begin kind of chunking up our vegetables here. I'm just going to take the ends off of these carrots, and I'm going to just kind of go like so. Now, and down here on this end, on the larger end, I'm going to cut them in half. It'll still go about, I'm going to say, 1.5 inches or so. We want some chunks here. That's a little one. Okay. So into the pot we go. Now I've got 8 ounces of baby bella mushrooms, and those are going to go right straight into the pot. I got 4 stalks of celery here. I'm not going to make my chunks of the celery quite as big. In fact, on the larger ends down here, I'm going to go ahead and cut them in half. Into the pot they go. Got a bell pepper here. I'm going to chunk this real good. I'm going to chunk it. I don't want small pieces. We're not dicing here. Clean a little membrane out. So our bell pepper is chunked and into the pot. Now I've got 2 fairly large onions here. I'm going to cut these. I'm going to chunk them as well. I'm going to go like so. So. I'm going to turn them. Cut them in half just like that. And into the pot. Now I got 8 potatoes. Hopefully they're going to fit into the pot. I think I'm going to end up going with 6 to start with. Okay, so I'm going to top this off with some tomato juice. There we go. I'll put my lid on it. Now we're going to crank the heat back up. We want to come back to a boil. And we'll be back in a little bit. Now then, I have not put any salt in this. And the reason being is because my broth has quite a lot of sodium in it. And so I want to taste it before I put more salt to it. Alright folks, so we came to a boil. In fact, made a little mess actually. Because I boiled over while I wasn't looking. And now we're going to take it to a simmer. Or it is at a simmer actually. But we're going to simmer it for another hour. We got to cook down these potatoes and carrots and all that good stuff. And the potatoes are going to help thicken our stew from the starch in the potatoes. We may end up thickening it more. We will just see how it goes in an hour. There'd be 2 different ways we could thicken it. One would be the use of tomato paste. The other one would be to make a roux, which is kind of the beginning of a gravy. We'll come back in an hour. I got the timer going on the microwave over there, and we'll be back. Okay folks, well the timer still has about 20 minutes to go. I made 2 decisions. I'm going to go ahead and put some salt in this. So I'm going to put a tablespoon of salt to start with. That's kosher salt. My vegetables are softening up nicely. Here's one of my potatoes. Still got a little bit of hardness to it, but not much. Certainly by the time this 20 minutes is over, it's going to be fairly well. My carrots, I don't know if you can see that, slid right into that big piece of carrot. So I'm also going to begin trying to thicken it up a bit. And so I've got a 6-ounce can of tomato paste here. I'm going to put some of that right in there, like so. That would also be the way you thicken up your spaghetti sauce or your chili maybe. And anytime you want to thicken something like this with potatoes in it, you want to make sure you do that at the end, because your potatoes are putting starch into the mix here. I'm going to go 1 more tablespoon of the salt. I think that's going to be it on the salt. Now in here I have 2 tablespoons of flour mixed with cold water. It's going to make it a little slurry here. And we want to break up that flour in here. Make sure it's well mixed. Because once we put it in that hot stew, we are not going to be able to mix the flour. You want to make sure you use cold water or cold milk if you're making a milk gravy or something like that when you're using a thickening agent. In this case, flour is our thickening agent. Put that right into our stew there. Stir as we go. That will help to thicken our stew. And this stew will be even better tomorrow night. Perfect. I am happy with the way this is turning out. Alright folks, hopefully you can see that it has thickened up quite nicely. Our stew is looking really good. See how the stuff will float, not exactly float, but hold on top. I just heard the timer go off, so we're ready to turn off our heat here. And as this cools, it'll actually thicken a little bit more, just like as a gravy will after you turn the heat off. Alright, so give me a few minutes and we'll have this all plated up and ready to go. Alright folks, so there you go. That is a beautiful dinner. And here in just a second I'm going to turn around and do the obligatory taste testing. Of course I've already tasted most all of this already, so I know what it's going to taste like, but hey, far be it from me to deprive you folks of the sensory overload here. Alright folks, well you saw how I made this beef stew, and you can do it too. Now you don't have to smoke your chuck roast there. That was something I just threw in because I'm a barbecue guy, and I just wanted to see what kind of flavor it would add. By all means, cube up your chuck roast and sear it in a good skillet and add it to your beef stew. You can do this. You know, as a kid, I fell in love with Denny Moore beef stew, and ever since then, it has been one of my favorite meals. I love it. Folks, this is nearly perfect, and you can do this. I'll leave a copy of my finished recipe here. And folks, don't let this one pass you by. If you like what you're seeing, do me a favor, down here in the bottom right hand corner, hit like and subscribe, because there's always more to come. Thanks for watching. That garlic bread is excellent.